picture this moment with me. You're about to learn something that will forever change how you see martial arts, government power, and what human beings are truly capable of. These are legends that have been whispered in the darkest corners of American intelligence agencies for over 50 years. Veterans who served in classified programs, scientists who worked on projects that officially never existed, whistleblowers who risked everything to preserve this knowledge. Is this absolute truth? Is this carefully constructed wisdom wrapped in an incredible story? You decide what resonates in your heart. But understand this: every person who shared these accounts put their life on the line to keep this knowledge from dying in the shadows of government secrecy. Feel that electricity in the air right now? That's not coincidence. That's recognition. Something deep inside you knows this story matters, knows it's going to unlock something you've been searching for without even realizing it. January 1972. Groom Lake Facility, Nevada, the same location the public knows as Area 51. But this wasn't about UFOs or alien technology. This was about something far more dangerous to the established order. A human being who had transcended every limitation. The military-industrial complex believed defined our species. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a neuroscientist working for DARPA's most classified division, was reviewing test footage that would either revolutionize warfare or get her eliminated. The recruitment deception. What you need to understand about Bruce Lee's relationship with the U.S. government is that it didn't begin in Hollywood. It started years earlier, when young recruiters posing as martial arts enthusiasts began showing up at his Seattle demonstrations. These weren't ordinary fans. They were talent scouts working for Operation Golden Dragon, a program designed to identify individuals with superhuman potential for military exploitation. Bruce thought he was inspiring a new generation of Americans to embrace martial arts philosophy. What he didn't realize was that every demonstration, every private lesson, every conversation was being recorded, analyzed, and studied by teams of military scientists who saw him not as a teacher, but as a weapon to be reverse engineered. The deception was perfect. Bruce's American students included several who were actually military operatives with advanced degrees in physics, psychology, and bioweapons research. They appeared to be dedicated disciples, but they were really human surveillance equipment, documenting capabilities that shouldn't exist according to every scientific model. The Pentagon used to understand human limitations. Take a deep breath right now and feel that anger building in your chest. Feel what it means to discover that something pure and beautiful was being secretly corrupted by people who saw only power and control. If that fire is burning in you, if you recognize that this is exactly how our government operates, hit that like button and let's send a message that Americans are ready to face uncomfortable truths about the forces that really run this country. The first forbidden technique, dimensional strike. The technique that most terrified Pentagon analysts wasn't Bruce's speed or power. It was something he called the dimensional strike. In classified footage captured during a 1971 demonstration, Bruce appeared to hit targets that existed in parallel timelines, affecting reality across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Dr. Martinez watched in disbelief as Bruce struck a wooden board while blindfolded, but instead of breaking the board in front of him, he shattered identical boards positioned in separate rooms throughout the facility. Security cameras confirmed that Bruce never moved from his position, yet the impacts occurred simultaneously across 7 different locations. The physics team brought in to analyze the footage included Nobel Prize winners and theoretical scientists. from MIT and Caltech. Their conclusion was classified at the highest levels of government. Bruce Lee had somehow learned to access what quantum physicists call the many-worlds interpretation of reality, allowing his consciousness to operate across parallel dimensions. Military applications were immediately obvious. Imagine soldiers who could attack enemy positions without being physically present. Special forces operatives who could sabotage targets from thousands of miles away. Weapons systems that could strike through any defense because they were operating from alternate realities. Project Parallel Force was launched with unlimited funding and the most advanced technology available to the U.S. military. Scientists attempted to recreate Bruce's technique using everything from particle accelerators to experimental psychotropic drugs. Every attempt ended in catastrophic failure. Right now, close your eyes for just a moment and imagine what it would feel like to possess power that transcends the normal laws of physics. Imagine the responsibility that comes with abilities that could reshape reality itself. Feel that weight, that awesome responsibility. If you're experiencing that sense of profound possibility mixed with deep concern, you're beginning to understand why this knowledge had to be protected. The consciousness breakthrough, what the Pentagon never understood, was that Bruce's abilities weren't the result of physical training alone. They emerged from a level of consciousness development that Western science couldn't measure or replicate. Bruce had achieved what ancient Taoist masters called unity with the eternal Tao, a state where individual consciousness merges with the fundamental fabric of reality itself. This wasn't mystical nonsense to Bruce. Through decades of meditation, philosophical study, and spiritual practice, he had learned to perceive reality as it actually exists, not as separate objects in space and time, but as interconnected waves of consciousness manifesting across infinite dimensions. The dimensional strike worked because Bruce had realized that consciousness isn't produced by the brain. It's the fundamental substance from which physical reality emerges. When someone achieves complete unity with this understanding, they can direct their will through the quantum field that underlies all existence. Military scientists tried to replicate this through technological means: electromagnetic field generators, consciousness-altering drugs, hypnotic programming, even experimental surgery to implant quantum processors directly into volunteers' brains. Nothing worked because they were trying to achieve through force what could only be accessed through love, wisdom, and spiritual surrender. The second forbidden technique, soul reading, the second technique that made Bruce Lee a national security threat, was his ability to instantly read the complete psychological and spiritual profile of any person he encountered. Pentagon psychologists who studied this phenomenon called it soul reading, a form of perception that bypassed normal sensory channels to access information stored in what some called the Akashic records. During film tests, Bruce demonstrated this ability by accurately describing the childhood traumas, hidden fears, and deepest motivations of strangers he'd never met. But this wasn't parlor trick mentalism. Bruce could perceive the moral character, truthfulness, and future actions of anyone in his presence with 100% accuracy. For intelligence agencies that depended on deception, infiltration, and psychological manipulation, this ability represented an existential threat. No spy could maintain their cover. No double agent could hide their true loyalties. No political operative could disguise their real agenda from someone who could see directly into their soul. The CIA immediately began Operation Mirror Shield, attempting to develop countermeasures against soul reading and to create their own agents with similar abilities. They recruited psychics, trained remote viewers, and conducted thousands of experiments. On volunteers who'd been promised, they were participating in enhanced human potential research. Stop for a moment and really think about what this means. Imagine living in a world where deception becomes impossible, where anyone with true spiritual development can see through lies instantly. Picture how different society would be if politicians, corporate executives, and government officials couldn't hide their real intentions. If you're feeling that mix of hope and revolutionary potential, you're understanding why Bruce Lee had to be stopped. The empathic revolution, what terrified the power structure wasn't just Bruce's individual abilities. It was the possibility that he might teach these techniques to others. Soul reading wasn't unique to Bruce. It was a natural human capacity that had been suppressed through centuries of materialist conditioning and spiritual disconnection. Ancient traditions from every culture contained references to similar abilities. The Buddhist concept of mind reading, the Native American practice of seeing with the heart, the African tradition of spiritual sight. Bruce had rediscovered and systematized knowledge that was once common among spiritually developed humans. If even a small percentage of the American population developed soul-reading abilities, the entire system of control based on manipulation and deception would collapse overnight. Political campaigns would become impossible to fake. Corporate propaganda would be immediately recognized as lies, and citizens would be able to identify trustworthy leaders through direct spiritual perception. The implications extended far beyond politics. Marriages would be based on genuine compatibility rather than surface attraction. Business partnerships would be built on authentic mutual respect, and communities would naturally organize around individuals who demonstrated real wisdom and integrity. The third forbidden technique, reality convergence, the most dangerous technique Bruce Lee possessed, was called reality convergence, the ability to align multiple timeline probabilities to manifest specific outcomes in physical reality. This wasn't wish fulfillment or positive thinking. It was conscious manipulation of quantum probability to ensure that beneficial futures became inevitable. Pentagon scientists first documented this ability when Bruce accurately predicted the outcome of classified military operations he shouldn't have known existed. But he wasn't gathering intelligence through conventional means. He was perceiving which of many possible futures was most likely to occur based on current consciousness, patterns, and decision-making trends. Bruce could do more than predict the future. He could influence it. By making specific choices and taking particular actions at precisely calculated moments, he could ensure that timelines favorable to human freedom and spiritual development would manifest instead of those leading to increased suffering and control. The military applications were beyond anything previous weapons research had imagined. An operative with reality convergence abilities could ensure that enemy plans would fail, that friendly forces would survive dangerous missions, that political outcomes would favor American interests, and that technological breakthroughs would occur exactly when needed. Feel that sense of infinite possibility opening up in your consciousness right now. Imagine what it would mean if human beings could consciously participate in creating beneficial realities, instead of feeling helpless in the face of circumstances beyond our control. If you're experiencing that expansion of hope and empowerment, you're beginning to access the same consciousness Bruce Lee embodied. The spiritual science program Dr. Martinez became convinced that Bruce's abilities represented the next stage of human evolution, capabilities that would eventually become normal for our species. If we could overcome the spiritual and psychological limitations that currently constrain human development, she proposed Project Ascension, a program to research and develop these abilities through spiritual training rather than technological intervention. Her proposal was rejected and classified. Instead, the Pentagon authorized Operation Termination Protocol, a program designed to eliminate Bruce Lee and anyone else who demonstrated similar abilities. The official justification was national security, but the real motivation was preserving a system of control that depended on human spiritual unconsciousness. Dr. Martinez was transferred to a non-sensitive position and placed under permanent surveillance. Her research notes were confiscated, her test subjects were reassigned, and all evidence of Bruce's true capabilities was buried in classified archives that wouldn't be opened for 75 years. But Martinez had anticipated this response. Before her removal from the project, she had secretly documented everything and hidden copies of the research in multiple locations. She also began discreetly contacting individuals who showed signs of developing similar abilities, creating an underground network dedicated to preserving and developing these techniques outside of government control. The Assassination Protocol. By early 1973, Pentagon leadership had concluded that Bruce Lee represented an unacceptable risk to national security and global stability. His growing influence was inspiring millions of people to question authority, seek spiritual development, and explore human potential beyond government-approved limitations. Operation Final Solution was authorized at the highest levels of government, with orders to eliminate Bruce using methods that would appear completely natural. The assassination team included medical professionals, biochemists, and psychological warfare specialists who had developed undetectable methods for inducing fatal conditions in targeted individuals. The technique they chose was elegant and untraceable, a combination of electromagnetic frequency, manipulation, and psychoactive compounds that would cause rapid brain swelling while leaving no evidence in standard autopsy procedures. The assassination would be carried out during Bruce's visit to Hong Kong, taking advantage of the medical facilities and political protection available in the British territory. Right now, let yourself feel the full weight of what this means. Feel the anger that comes from knowing that a government supposedly representing the people would murder someone whose only crime was demonstrating human potential that threatened their control. If that rage is building in your chest, if you're recognizing how far the power structure will go to maintain dominance, hit that like button and show the algorithm that Americans are ready to handle the truth about what our own government does to its greatest citizens. The failed cover-up, the assassination, was carried out on July 20th, 1973, but the cover-up immediately began falling apart. Bruce's death was too convenient, too perfectly timed, and too suspicious for the martial arts community to accept the official explanation. Independent investigations began immediately, and within months, evidence of government involvement was surfacing. Dr. Martinez used her remaining government contacts to gather intelligence about the assassination team and their methods. She documented everything and began secretly distributing the information through the underground network she had established. By 1975, detailed evidence of Bruce Lee's murder was circulating among martial artists, scientists, and spiritual teachers around the world. The government response was swift and brutal. Network members began dying in apparent accidents, disappearing without trace, or suffering sudden mental breakdowns that required immediate psychiatric hospitalization. But the information had already spread too widely to be completely suppressed. Martinez herself was found dead in her apartment in 1976, officially ruled a suicide despite having no history of depression and having left behind detailed plans for her continued research. Her death was the signal for network members to go completely underground, operating in small, isolated cells with no central coordination. The modern revival for 40 years, knowledge of Bruce Lee's true abilities and the circumstances of his assassination remained hidden in the martial arts underground. But something began changing in the early 2000s. Young Americans started spontaneously developing abilities similar to those Bruce had demonstrated. These individuals had no knowledge of the classified research or the underground network yet. They were manifesting dimensional strike capabilities, soul-reading abilities, and reality convergence skills that matched Bruce's documented techniques. It was as if his death had planted seeds in the collective unconscious that were finally beginning to sprout. Dr. Martinez's network began carefully identifying and contacting these naturally gifted individuals, providing them with training and protection from government attention. They developed new teaching methods, created safe houses and training facilities, and established communication systems that couldn't be monitored by conventional surveillance. The revival accelerated dramatically after 2010, with thousands of Alva Americans developing superhuman abilities through spiritual training programs based on Bruce Lee's original techniques. Many of these individuals were veterans returning from Iraq and Afghanistan, seeking healing and meaning after experiencing the futility of conventional warfare. Close your eyes again and feel into your own potential right now. Feel that spark of recognition that tells you these abilities aren't science fiction. They're natural human capacities that have been suppressed through cultural conditioning and deliberate miseducation. If you're sensing that you might have latent abilities waiting to be developed, you're beginning to understand why you were drawn to this story. The government response. By 2015, Pentagon analysts had identified what they called the Bruce Lee effect, a rapidly growing population of Americans with demonstrated psychic and spiritual abilities that couldn't be explained by conventional science or controlled by traditional methods. Internal reports described this as the greatest threat to government authority since the American Revolution. Operation New Paradigm was launched to study, monitor, and if necessary, eliminate individuals showing signs of superhuman development. The program included enhanced surveillance systems, infiltration of spiritual communities, and development of new weapons specifically designed to disrupt consciousness-based abilities. But the government faced a problem their predecessors hadn't encountered. These new practitioners had learned from Bruce Lee's fate. They operated in complete secrecy, used spiritual protection techniques that made them difficult to locate or target, and had developed community networks that could rapidly respond to threats against any member. More importantly, they understood that their abilities came from love and spiritual development, rather than from techniques that could be stolen or replicated through force. Anyone attempting to use these powers for selfish or harmful purposes would find them becoming weaker rather than stronger, eventually losing the abilities entirely. The underground schools. Today, throughout America, secret schools operate in basements, warehouses, abandoned buildings, and private homes. teaching Bruce Lee's forbidden techniques to carefully selected students. These aren't commercial martial arts academies. They're spiritual communities dedicated to human evolution and consciousness development. Students are chosen not for physical ability or previous training, but for moral character, spiritual sincerity, and demonstrated commitment to using enhanced abilities for the benefit of humanity rather than personal gain. The training typically takes years and requires complete transformation of the student's consciousness and lifestyle. The curriculum includes intensive meditation practice, philosophical study, energy cultivation exercises, and practical applications of dimensional awareness. Students learn to perceive multiple realities simultaneously, to read the spiritual condition of others accurately, and to influence probability patterns through conscious intention aligned with universal harmony. But the most important training involves developing the love, wisdom, and humility necessary to use these abilities responsibly. Bruce Lee's example serves as both inspiration and warning. Tremendous power without corresponding spiritual development leads to corruption, isolation, and ultimately destruction. Take a moment right now to sense whether something inside you is responding to this information with recognition rather than skepticism. Are you feeling drawn to seek out this kind of training? Are you sensing that you might have qualities that would make you a suitable candidate? If you're experiencing that inner calling, you might be one of the people Bruce Lee's sacrifice was meant to reach. The spiritual warriors, the practitioners of Bruce Lee's techniques who emerged from these underground schools became what network members called spiritual warriors, individuals dedicated to protecting human freedom and promoting consciousness evolution through their enhanced abilities. They don't fight with physical violence. Instead, they use soul reading to identify corrupt politicians, reality convergence to ensure positive outcomes in important situations, and dimensional awareness to protect communities from both conventional and exotic threats. They work invisibly, influencing events from behind the scenes to promote justice, truth, and spiritual development. Many spiritual warriors work in ordinary jobs: teachers, nurses, small business owners, community organizers, using their abilities to help individuals and families while avoiding government detection. Others work directly in political and social change movements, providing guidance and protection for activists working to transform American society. The network has grown to include thousands of practitioners across all 50 states, connected by secure communication systems and unified by shared commitment to the principles Bruce Lee lived and died for: truth, justice, spiritual evolution, and the unlimited potential of human consciousness. The final revelation, brothers and sisters. If you've stayed with this story to the end, if every word has resonated with something deep in your soul, then you're exactly the kind of person Bruce Lee gave his life to reach. You're not reading this by accident. You're not here by coincidence. You're being called to become part of something that's been building for 50 years. The techniques the Pentagon tried to steal aren't really techniques at all. They're natural expressions of human consciousness operating at its highest level. Bruce Lee didn't create them. He rediscovered abilities that belong to our species as our birthright. The only reason we don't all possess them is because we've been systematically disconnected from our spiritual nature. Every time you choose truth over comfortable lies, you're developing soul-reading abilities. Every time you stand up for justice despite personal cost, you're building reality convergence power. Every time you recognize the interconnection of all life, you're accessing dimensional awareness. The government tried to steal Bruce's techniques because they understood that these abilities represent the end of their power over humanity. When enough people develop spiritual sight, political deception becomes impossible. When enough people can influence reality through consciousness, physical force becomes obsolete. When enough people unite in love and wisdom, systems based on fear and control simply collapse. Feel that calling in your heart right now. Feel that sense of destiny, of purpose, of knowing that you are meant for something greater than what our culture tells you is possible. If you're experiencing that recognition, if you know in your bones that you're meant to be part of this awakening, hit that like button one final time and make a commitment to begin your own journey toward spiritual warrior status. Like this video to signal others who share this calling that they're not alone in sensing the approaching transformation. Share this story with everyone ready to understand the real reason Bruce Lee had to die and why his legacy lives on in every person brave enough to develop their own unlimited potential. Subscribe, because next week we're revealing the locations of 3 secret training centers where Bruce Lee's techniques are still being taught to qualified candidates. This isn't entertainment anymore, folks. This is recruitment for the spiritual army that's going to reclaim human freedom from the forces that have suppressed our true nature for generations. Remember, they killed Bruce Lee because he showed us what we really are. Our job is to become what he died to protect, awakened human beings who can no longer be controlled, manipulated, or limited by any external authority. The revolution starts in consciousness, and consciousness starts with you. Like, share, subscribe, awaken. The war for human freedom is being fought in dimensions most people can't even see, and we're winning.